Me and Cameron Buckley will now engage in a 12-round championship contest under Papaya Rules. Good luck. Welcome back to Motorsport 101. Oh, and by the way, George Russell won the race. That's something that's worth pointing out as well, by the way. Welcome to episode 619 of Motorsport 101. No, this actually is 619. I actually miscounted last week. Whoops, my bad. But welcome along to our Motorsport 101 podcast once again. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison. Now, I need to say, if I do sound a little bit off this week, forgive me. There's a reason we didn't have an IndyCar season review. And I hate mentioning this because we've kicked it back and forth about 3 weeks now. And I'm really sorry. We were meant to do it, last week on Sunday. We were meant to record it then. The problem was I came down with a really bad case of the flu that day, and I could barely speak. And we just couldn't do it, and I'm really sorry about that, guys. I've done pretty much nothing but rest in a bed for the last 3 days, and I'm just about well enough where I can do this now. So please forgive me if I sound a little bit off. That's because I am. But we'll soldier on for the next hour and a half of 2 podcasts we're recording tonight, and then hopefully by next week I'll be back to something like 100%. So I'm a bit sick. Cam's a bit sick off COVID still. RJ's come down with a horrible case of journalism, so he's not even here this week. Or next week, actually, either. That's annoying. But alas, here we are. But hey, Cam, how's it going?
It's certainly going. Yes, I still have the lingering COVID cough, which is so much fun. And now, playing my part in the Papaya Rules, Dre Harrison is going directly into a guardrail.
Well, you couldn't at least put me up for a 619 first, give it a little bit of a West Coast pop at the end, at least give the fans some entertainment on the way out, no?
Nope, if gap car.
Well, yeah, it would be the way, wouldn't it, in Formula One? So, yeah, this is the Singapore Grand Prix episode. We're going to be talking a lot about, George Russell out of nowhere with a big surprise victory in Singapore, his second win of the year. And I don't think anybody quite knows how he did it. So we'll get into some of that.
Stop me if you've heard that one before about Mercedes randomly coming good.
Yeah, it just happens every once in a while, isn't it funny? We'll talk about the next chapter of Papaya Rules because Norris and Piastri actually hit each other. Kind of, sort of. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit as well and what that means for McLaren as they actually did wrap up the Constructors' Championship this weekend. Not that anyone will talk about it because it's all now ground conspiracies and favoritism, everybody's favorite Formula One topic. We'll also talk about Red Bull and, the package might be real in terms of Max Verstappen and his competitiveness. We'll talk about that a little bit soon as well. Ferrari's on the table. Alex Dunn is on the table as well.
Ferrari.
Because it wouldn't be McLaren without some driver drama as well, because Alex Dunn has apparently left at McLaren's driver academy, so we'll talk about that a little bit as well. And Mohammed Ben Sulayem, who basically, I love that everybody in the mainstream Formula One news media was a week late to figuring this one out, thanks to the F1 subreddit, so well done them. Figuring out that Mohammed Ben Sulayem is basically guaranteed to win the election for FIA presidency in December. We'll explain how and why at the end of this week's show. So with all that in mind, over the next hour or so, here's where you can find us real quick. We're on youtube.com/motorsport101. We're on facebook.com/motorsport101. We're on Twitter at motorsport_101. And if you want to follow us on Blue Sky, you can at Dre Harrison or cbuckley917 at bsky.social. We're on Instagram at motorsport101pod. We're on TikTok at m101_podcast. Thanks everybody who got our Marquez come up to 10,000 views, by the way. We are very grateful for that. Even if 90% of the comments was telling me that, no, it's not the greatest comeback story of all time, Mick Doohan's is. And I'm like, Mick Doohan himself agrees that it's Marc Marquez. Like,
you know what the neat part is? No one on this earth is a bigger Mick Doohan fan than me, and he knows this.
Yeah. But again, I love that everyone just assumes we don't know what we're talking about here. But like the one person in the comments whose name was mentioned who I'll be like, you know what, fair enough, Ian Hutchinson, who did come back to win at the Isle of Man after a catastrophic injury. That one I can give you. fair enough. Doing? Up for debate. But alas, follow us on TikTok anyway, even though we don't know what we're talking about, apparently. You can also check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/.
At this point, that'll get you the President of the United States job.
Hey, apparently it's a well-paying gig. Patreon.com/motorsport101. Watch out for the paracetamol. $5 gets you early access to all of our content. You can upgrade to the $10 tier to listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded. And Cam's giving me the finger right now so hard. Shout out to Vic, Ghost Raptor, Kira, and Rory, all listening along as we speak. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for listening and supporting us. Much appreciated as ever. Right, without further ado, let's get into the Singapore Grand Prix.
This was another surprising weekend for quite a few reasons. From seemingly out of nowhere, it was George Russell who took complete control of the weekend, qualifying on pole with a new track record, and then leading nearly every single lap en route to his second win of 2025. Slightly further behind, though, it was more drama for McLaren, as a lunge from Lando Norris at turn 3 of the opening lap had him make minor contact with teammate Oscar Piastri to claim third. Piastri was not impressed, to say the least, and asked for a position swap, only for McLaren to take no further action. Norris spent most of the race studying the back of Max Verstappen's Red Bull, with Max in second and Lando third. The 3-4 finish for McLaren was enough for them to take their second consecutive Constructors' Championship for Woking. Last time they did that, incredibly, 1990 and 1991.
I wasn't even born in 91.
Back in the Senna Burger days. And, championships, I can't talk. Championship standings after 18 rounds, though. Oscar Piastri on 336, Lando 22 behind, Max 63 behind.
It's an interesting situation. Lando Norris is back within a round. That's worth that's worth noting. He's chipping away at it, which is interesting. Verstappen did take a bit more out of the McLarens, but not as much as he probably would have liked, given he only finished second on the road. Lost out on another 7 thanks to George Russell's surprise victory, which I think we'll start off with here on this episode of the show. I mean, is it a good sign that when Jenson Button's interviewing George Russell after the race in Parc Fermé, like, George said, quote, "We had a couple of races on the calendar we were circling to potentially we could win. This wasn't one of them. We need to sit down with the team and figure out why we were so fast here." Is that a good sign, Cam?
I mean, it's the classic Mercedes trope ever since the ground effect cars debuted in 22, that when they're good, they don't really know why. And it does, like last year, there was like a clear pattern with it. Anytime it was really cold, the Mercedes, the W15 was really good. And it's, again, this situation where out of nowhere they unload and they look like their early V6 turbo era self of just, they go out, they win. It's completely drama-free. And Russell's win was more or less drama-free. He got pole, he kept it on lap 1, and he was never really seen again. Even a little soft tire play at the start didn't really work out for Red Bull because Max got nowhere near a good enough start to actually justify it.
Yeah. And
Kimi had a good race too.
Yeah, Kimi was good. He was up there. Sent one on Charles Leclerc and towards the back end of that as well in the final chicane complex. That was bold of him.
We'll expand on that a little bit later. There's a very good reason why he could dive from so far back on Charles Leclerc. But yeah, I mean, Mercedes has been so weird this year of just fluctuating between, like, they started off, they look like clear second best, and then they were third best and fourth. And they just keep fluctuating up and down. And then you'll get a race every 6 or 7 races where they just blow the field away.
Yeah. And, like, there's no obvious pinpointer that Singapore would be the one for them to win, because Canada, very different type of track, very different type of challenge. The only thing that's really similar is the heavy braking pressure, i.e. you put your brakes under a lot of shit. Besides that, there's not really a huge amount of similarity between Singapore and Canada. And again, it's a hot track. This was a heat hazard, the first FIA heat hazard race, because the ambient temperature was above 31 degrees. But the thing is, that doesn't really translate to the track in Singapore, because the track still remains relatively cold, even though the actual air temperature, because it's at night, and F1 cars tend to go quicker at night. So that might have something to do with it. But again, it wasn't a particularly cold race. So
yeah. They did bring a new front wing this weekend. That did actually give them, like, the way they had set the car up, they actually had terrific straight line speed as well. And that was where they were making a little bit of their money in terms of lap time. But again, when Mercedes themselves don't really understand it, we're not really in a position to either, I guess.
Yeah, us pundits are out in the lurch, because it's like, this is how Mercedes was so fast at Singapore, and they were like, we have no idea. Where's John Noble when you need him? Shit. It's actually quite confusing, where if the team itself doesn't know, how the hell are we going to tell you that one's fast? We're trying by process of elimination to try and figure out how they're so quick, and yet we got nothing for you. Again, new front wing, maybe. It was a colder race, but not
cooler.
A cold one.
We've seen cooler track temperatures like earlier this year not have this effect for the Mercedes. So I don't know. And Russell as well was just pretty much millimeter perfect from practice forward. When he was on pole, I mean, with the way that Singapore is and how difficult it is to pass here, especially with the Omega scum air these cars are now producing. He kept it on lap one. There was never really a danger of him losing out unless he just got a safety car completely wrong. And we didn't get one of those in Singapore. 2 years in a row, we haven't got one of those.
For the first 16 years of Singapore's existence, we had a guaranteed safety car every year, and now we've had 2 in a row that haven't, and all 20 cars made the finish.
It's only happened, 18 times in the history of Formula One?
Yeah.
It's not that common.
Everybody started and everybody made it home, which...
Despite the Scuderia's best efforts.
Despite the Scuderia's... And despite this is Singapore, where one hit on the wall and you're probably done, and everybody made it home. Shit's wild. That is the complete anti-Singapore Grand Prix right there. No wonder it was so boring to watch. But, no, besides his crash on Friday, George Russell was essentially flawless. Excellent. His 2 best times in qualifying would have been good enough for pole. Had a couple attempts on
one of very
Max.
few people to actually improve on their second run.
Yeah, and even I think he brushed the wall on his actual quick one. I think he left the 10th on the table by brushing the wall, and it still, didn't matter. No one else got close enough. Max got on the front row alongside him, tried the soft tyre gamble. Apparently it's worth maybe 5 or 6 meters off the line in terms of extra grip, but it wasn't enough to get the jump on George. And that's kind of, and this is me setting it up here, what happened at turn 3 on the opening lap, which has become the big story of the weekend, because, well, it's a title fight and we need something out here to wet our beaks, so to speak. And, the Papaya Rules coming into play again. Now, for context, what happened here was that Piastri got a pretty reasonable start, as did Norris. Piastri was starting 3rd, Norris was starting 5th. Piastri had to hang it around the outside of Max at turn 1 and 2. But Piastri left the door open for Norris to attack him at turn 3. He attacks him at 3. He gets alongside. In front of Lando, Max is going quite slow on the apex of turn 3. Norris has to check himself because Norris is going quicker than he expected compared to Max's closing speed. And as he twitches his car to adjust for it, he clatters into Oscar Piastri on the side of him. There's contact. It knocks out a part of Norris's front wing end plate. No real harm done. Piastri's car was fine. As we mentioned in the set list, Piastri got on the radio and immediately said, "Are we just going to let him get away with that one then?" And McLaren let it go. Norris would go on to finish in 3rd, Piastri in 4th. It's a 3-point gain for Norris in the title fight. It's down to 22. What did you make of this as it happened, Cam? Because I've got a lot of thoughts on this.
Is it kind of wild that I don't have a huge amount of thoughts on this? At least the incident itself. That I actually thought the incident itself was kind of like, I think it was classic opportunistic turn one. And actually that front wing damage was off of Max's car. That side, he just grazes the back of Max's car. And broke the end plate. It stuck around. It wasn't dangerous or anything. I'm surprised that was worth a meatball a couple of years ago with Kevin Magnussen, but this was sturdy enough that it didn't really move around. But the door was very much open, and Piastri made a decision to try and go around the outside of Max, which that is never a smart decision at the best of times. And he ended up just losing out at turn 3. I thought the incident itself was hard, but ultimately fair.
I think a lot of people have very conveniently ignored the role that Max plays in this. Max was slower than expected on turn 3, and I think that's what Norris has to account for, because ultimately Norris is boxed in. He's got a car directly to his right, and he's got a car directly in front of him. There's not an awful lot Lando can do in that situation. He's committed to that line that he's on right there. Max checks up. Norris has to adjust, otherwise he loses his entire front wing anyway. And, of course, it's incidental contact. There was clearly no malicious intent from Lando as that happened. And
I think it was a classic case of, like, 3 into 1 doesn't go.
Yeah.
And 3 cars made contact, but it was all relatively light contact.
Not enough to alter their races dramatically. Everybody was ultimately fine. And the stewards looked at it. They said no further action. McLaren said no further action. I agree with McLaren for what it's worth. I don't think that was worth a position swap. But of course, everybody's now saying that Piastri's been screwed. And this is where I've got to go into Mythbusters mode for a little bit here, because it was mentioned that Oscar mentioned it on the radio. Obviously, he was shut down by his team. He didn't celebrate on the podium with the rest of the team when they celebrated the Constructors' Championship win. And a lot of people are saying that the team is treating Piastri like dirt. Now, I need to clarify a couple of things here, because a lot of people don't understand this. Piastri finished in 4th. It is standard procedure in a Formula 1 race that if you do not finish on the podium, you go to the media pen to talk to the written press. That is standard procedure in any Formula 1 race. Because Piastri
that's
finished
the case for every other driver besides the 3 who get to stand up and blast each other with champagne.
Yep. He finished 4th. You're obligated to speak to the press first in the media pen. You're not going to the podium to celebrate. You've got to talk to the media. That, yes, it's a little bit of a bad look, because the FOM clearly had a different plan. They wanted McLaren to celebrate the Constructors' Championship on the podium. A nice gesture. Fair enough. So they got as much of the team out there on the podium as they could. But you still got to talk to the press. And that's why Oscar was there. There was also the viral footage of Oscar plugging his radio out and turning the car off as Zach was celebrating and obviously congratulating the team on the radio. The audio in the video was out of sync in that video. McLaren had told the media the next morning that by the time that Zach had started celebrating with the team on the radio in front of everybody, Piastri had already shut his car off. It was just a coincidence that, it looks worse than it was, because, like with many broadcasters, the radio and the TV pictures were not in sync. But, of course, people took that as, Oscar's just turned it off because he's pissed off about the situation, which, again, I need more conclusive evidence than what we saw on TV to prove that.
We wouldn't know because he shut the car off.
Right.
We literally don't know what he would have said in that moment. It feels like people looking for reasons to say that their man is aggrieved or that there's bias. And the thing is with that is that McLaren has tried so hard not to be biased this season, as well as portions of last, that they have made requests of both of their drivers that would be laughed out of the building by most Formula One, by most teams, most F1 champions. Like if they were really favoring Lando this year, they wouldn't be giving like Oscar the opportunity to split his strategy and go after him in places like Hungary. They wouldn't be giving these two opportunities to go out and race with one another because they would just call Papaya Rules and say, all right, bring the cars home.
Hold position.
I think, yeah, hold position. And I think the next topic that we'll talk about, that may be something they have to start doing because they are going to have to keep their shit tucked for the remainder of the year. I just don't. I feel like people are seeing what they want to see rather than what's actually in front of them.
I think there's a lot of people that are deep in their feels. This is a feelings era. You know,
it's people are either super high on Lando to the point where it's unhealthy or super low on Lando to the point where it's unhealthy.
And I think a lot of it is that I think there's a lot of Piastri fans out there who want their cake and they want to be able to eat it too. They want him to win the world championship while they also want him to stick it to the man because they feel like Lando's getting all the biased opportunities at McLaren. And I don't think that's true. I don't think there's enough hard evidence to suggest that McLaren's favouring Lando one way or the other. You know what I think it is? I think Piastri's a better front runner than Lando Norris is. And when Piastri's the better front runner, he doesn't need the help of his team to make a switch or make a decision on elements like that. There's a reason why Piastri's won 7 Grand Prix this year compared to Norris's 5. I think Piastri's just better when he's at the front leading a race. And me personally, I look at the situation and I go, I can't get there. If anything, Piastri's become the master of the you don't ask if you don't get, you know. Well, it's just, should that really be the don't get if you don't ask sort of question? Because we talked about this on previous episodes. Japan wanted lead car priority to try and beat Max, wasn't given to him. You know, we've seen incidents like obviously Monza and the faulty pit stop on the switch there. We've been warned about locking up under braking and nearly hitting Lando twice this season over in Hungary and in Austria. So if you're a Piastri fan, I could see why, to a degree, they've taken umbrage with the way these races have played out this year. And you know, they've reacted in a certain way. I personally don't read as much into that as a lot of people do. I actually think that for the first time, Piastri's feeling the pressure of being in a title race. Because he's not been as strong, in my opinion, in the last 4 or 5 rounds as he has been at the start of the year when it looked like he was going to cakewalk this championship to a degree. And he looked convincingly better than Lando, who was being typecast as the bottler again. I think that's changed. I think Lando's been a fair bit stronger. Since the summer break, I think Lando's got used to this new car, and I think he's been better since the break. And I think Oscar's starting to feel it for the first time in a little while because this is his first championship battle.
It's coming down to winning time.
Yeah, and the only reason, as Kira points out in the chat, that Piastri's got more points into the break is because of the Zandvoort failure. Norris lost 18 points that day.
It would be within the margin of a race victory versus second. Otherwise, and I mean at the same time, like Piastri had the worst weekend of his F1 career in Baku, bar none.
Dreadful.
And he was very fortunate that Lando had a pretty awful day himself when McLaren were not at their best. So, there was a question posed that I was not here for, but I did answer. Is Red Bull real? Is it possible? And I said, ask me after Singapore.
So now I'm going to ask you, after Singapore, is Red Bull real, Cameron Buckley?
It's on the table. It's on the other end of the table. Max needs some help, but if you were to pencil in a track 3 months ago where you think McLaren would absolutely fucking bushwhack everybody, it would have been here. And down the stretch, Lando was definitely the quickest car on track, but also Max had 7 laps of tire offset. Worse versus Lando. He was able to hold him off. Red Bull looked good this weekend. Really, a Max mistake in Q3 away from potentially being in Russell's position.
Yeah, this is how I would look at it, because Max went back to back in Baku and Monza, but they are two similar tracks in terms of setup.
Off.
Yeah, you strip all the downforce off, you go low downforce, you go for top end speed, and you see what happens. And Max won both of those races fairly comfortably.
It's what the RB21. The RB21's issue is maintaining that balance that Max likes, which is pin the nose and I'll deal with the rest when you pile the downforce on. It induces understeer. It induces just a balance that Max can get lap time out of at the cost of shredding tires.
Yeah.
And then they bring the biggest front wing you've ever fucking seen in your life here to Singapore. And, I mean, he beat McLaren in a straight fight.
It's worth pointing out that McLaren did bushwhack the field here last year. Max was, 20-plus seconds back last year. Piastri
he was second
nowhere.
And nowhere near Lando. Lando drove away from him. And the biggest drama point from last year was that Lando almost put it in the wall with a 20-second lead.
I don't think enough has been made of the fact that McLaren made a complete Horlicks of this weekend. Like, they still have, in my opinion, the fastest car overall here. They should have won this race. They didn't even get a car on the front row, and they ended up with just one car on the podium. For a team that's won 12 out of 17 going into this weekend, they should have been favourites for the win again here, and they've been blasted by George Russell and beaten by Red Bull for the 3rd weekend in a row. Like, that's not acceptable for a team of McLaren's quality. And this is a round they should have been penciling in as a guaranteed win, and they've
guaranteed 1-2, man.
They should have 1-2 this, and they said they've got a 3-4. They were beaten by Mercedes, straight up. Like, that's not good.
And the thing is, like, Red Bull has been developing because, look, Red Bull knows that they're not going to be good next year. I think everyone in that team knows there's nothing to play for.
They're saying the quiet part out loud. Yeah.
Yeah, they've been pouring development into this car to try and get something out of this year, knowing that next year is probably going to be a whole lot of sitting at the side of the road with a Ford badge in your hand. Max needs help. The required run rate is a little bit out of his hands, is what's about 10.5 points a race.
10.5.
Even in the best. Yeah, he needs some help. But what this does put on McLaren needs to be perfect. They have no other option. Because if we go to Coda, where there's a lot that suits McLaren there, with the medium speed turns that we know this car loves, there's also a lot that suits the Red Bull, with the high speed turns that we know that car loves. If Max wins in Coda, if there is any hesitation from Oscar, if that car breaks down once, it is wide open.
You're right. If this was a game of snooker, this would be Max needs 2 snookers to get back in the frame. But he's got a shot. Like, he needs help, though. But it does put pressure on McLaren to execute. And if there's one thing McLaren, in my opinion, has as a weakness as a team, they don't really know how to win. I've said this for many years. Their infrastructure and their higher-ups, they often struggle under pressure.
You know what they feel like this year? They feel like if Binotto-era Ferrari had produced a car which was, like, unbeatably quick, but all the other issues are still there.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those where I feel like McLaren's got a busted car that's 2 to 3 temps quicker than the field. I've said that all year. I still stand by it, I think. That on its best day, McLaren's got 2 to 3 temps on the field. But you do not want to give Max Verstappen opportunities to beat you. And you're giving up a bit too many chances. And you already had Max badly punish you in Baku earlier this season when Piastri had his worst weekend in Formula One. If you have one more of those, you're in trouble, quite frankly.
It cuts both ways. Like, Max is really missing the points from the industrial strength head loss in Spain. And really missing the
Austria
points.
Taken out in Austria by Kimi as well. That was probably 15 points right there.
Yeah, you give him back what probably would have been 12 in Spain, and probable podium, probably 15 points in Austria.
Called it 25?
What was that?
If you called it 25 points, Max is 38 back with 6 to play.
And a car which looks to have its ills seem to have been cured, at least in the short term. Probably still need a little bit more proof of concept in Coda. If they win there, there's no reason why Max couldn't win out the rest of the year. And that suddenly becomes very, very difficult for McLaren if they slip up anywhere. If they just 2-3 at home for the rest of the year, they're going to be all right. But
and the problem is as well,
more than that is concerning.
And the problem is it's not like last year where Lando had such a huge points advantage over Piastri. McLaren could focus all in and say to one driver, here's our guy. Piastri's prepared to swap positions around. We're all in on getting Lando Norris into title contention. They can't do that this year because there's only 22 points between Piastri and Norris. They're going to take points off each other. They've been very evenly matched for most of the season. So, look, I don't think either McLaren driver is winning out that battle between now and the rest of the year. I think it's going to go back and forth like it has done for pretty much the entire season. And that, again, could open the door for Max to take points off each other. It's touching.
Dre, last year, I mean, and I'll bring it back to McLaren last year. Remember when Oscar had that phenomenal kamikaze dive in Monza? When Lando was trying to catch Max for the title?
Yeah.
That got a 55-minute standing ovation. No conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah. It's funny how that works out in the end.
But, I mean, it feels like there's one more twist here. And let's not forget Brazil last season, where it looked like Lando was going to hit a killing blow against Max, and then Max parried it and stabbed him up under the chin.
Yeah. You just don't know with this championship, and we've
especially
already
with
had
a couple of these tracks coming up. Coda can throw up crazy stuff. Brazil is Brazil. Weird stuff happens at Sao Paulo. It's a racetrack that breeds chaos for some reason.
It's an anime protagonist's favorite circuit. Funky shit tends to happen there.
Never tell me the odds.
Yeah, like Max Verstappen is only 7-1 to win the championship, which, given he's 63 points back, is wild.
Yeah, well, we've seen what he can produce under pressure, good and bad. But since the summer break, I mean, he has been phenomenally good.
He's outscored everybody, and I think every team except McLaren on points since the summer break.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, if it's under 10 points, that Spain head loss is going to be really painful. Anything else that just, like, Red Bull came on song this season just a little too late. We're gonna have to wait and see.
They left it. They left it until 60% of the season to get good. You can't leave it that late. It's too big a hole most of the time.
Well, what if you never come good? What if you're always just a perpetual clusterfuck of a team?
Ferrari, why are you the way that you are?
Dre, set the stage. I'm gonna get a lawn chair.
Yeah. It doesn't even need that much storytelling. It's just another mediocre Ferrari weekend. Charles Leclerc is...
That is harsh on mediocre, I'll have you know.
Charles Leclerc is just there for most of the weekend, doesn't do anything special. Hamilton actually out-qualified him for only the 5th time this season. 5 out of 18 rounds, I think it is now, that Lewis has out-qualified Charles, so he's getting whooped in the qualifying battle head-to-head. But even then, Hamilton tries a dicey two-stop strategy, puts on a set of softs at the end of the race. Just one problem, and you could see what was coming because Leclerc gets out of Hamilton's way to let Hamilton go after the Mercedes of Antonelli and whatnot. A huge puff of black brake dust comes out, and I'm like, uh-oh. Now,
keep in mind, while all this is happening, Charles Leclerc is being told over the radio and arguing with his engineer about his 200 meters of lift and coast per lap.
How do you need 200 meters of lift and coast into the track's heaviest braking zone to get by? What has gone wrong here?
You see, it's every individual component of the SF25. All of them. Especially the HP stickers.
And then, in the final 5 laps of the race, we find out Hamilton's brakes are completely gone.
I don't think that's the correct term.
They were on fire.
They might have exploded just a tad.
They were on fire, and it was at the point where Lewis was cutting every back corner he could think of to try and nurse the car home. So much so, on the final lap of the race, Alonso had gunned down a 30-second deficit to Lewis to try and get an extra position in 7th place. Alonso ran out of corners. He was literally 1 corner short. He was 4 tenths, I think, behind over the line.
He ran out of corners because Lewis was taking them.
Yeah, Lewis literally was taking them and cutting every apex he could find. Lewis initially got away with it. Then it was given a 5-second penalty after the race for, I think it wasn't exceeding track limits. It was track limits without justifiable reason. That's the first time I've ever heard that wording used, which...
Yes.
Yeah.
It caused a bit of a firestorm on social media with a lot of the LH44 ultras going, well, of course he had a justifiable reason. His brakes had failed, to which I countered, yes, it would have been a justifiable meatball. I'm shocked he wasn't meatballed for it. Because you could see it coming. We actually got the onboard. His brakes were on fire, and then it went out. And then they were on bigger fire, and then they went out. And then the left front brake disc exploded.
The worst part of this...
It didn't spin him off.
The worst part of this was the simple fact that we couldn't see it because the TV direction decided they wanted to focus on inevitably, George Russell's girlfriend in the this is becoming a growing F1 trend where they have to show the wags at every opportunity, and we didn't see any of that fun because they were too busy celebrating McLaren's Constructors' Championship win. That we didn't actually see Alonso try and chase down Lewis. You'd have to actually go out of your way on F1 TV and find the onboard footage of each individual driver to find it. Look, Singapore is not a great race at the best of times. That's when you need good TV direction to salvage you. And this wasn't good enough. I'm sorry. When you've got me agreeing with Matt and Tommy on a video short that the TV direction was whack.
The game is gone.
The game
end
has
of the
gone.
Universe.
This is me we're talking about.
Yeah, it was not great. Because we just saw, all we saw for most of the end of that race was just Max holding off Lando, where Lando, I think, got beside him 1 time. And otherwise just air blocked him because these cars are horrendous around Singapore now.
And we completely missed Carlos Sainz carving through the field late on to get a point at the end of the race as well. We completely missed it because none of it was shown. They were all in on the Norris-Verstappen fight, which, to a degree, I understand. But you've got the side-by-side on-board cameras now. You can put them in the timing tower. We've seen it now. You copied that from MotoGP.
So you own part of MotoGP now. Use some of it.
Right,
it's just odd. Ferrari, and it's come out after the race. Ferrari are mad at Charles because he keeps ragging on the car. Charles is mad at Ferrari because the car fucking stinks. Ferrari's mad at Lewis because he keeps grilling them for strategy and operations.
Yeah, and the team's mad at Lewis because he doesn't understand how Brembo brakes work because he's never used them in his F1 career until now.
That's 2014, back when they used to explode for him at Mercedes. in Germany.
Mm.
Dre, does this feel like we're getting towards a Ferrari bust cycle where they blow the team up?
Oh, I think if they don't hit the ground running in 2026, Fred will be cold.
And it's not Fred. I need to be quite clear. Like, Fred is...
I don't think it is either, but...
This team, there's so many cooks in the kitchen with Ferrari. There's always an agenda to push. There's always someone trying to get someone else's job. And this is like 2011 levels of mediocre Ferrari where they're not even fighting for podiums anymore most weekend. They're just kind of in the chasm, but behind McLaren and Red Bull. And on a good weekend, they'll be fighting with Mercedes. On a bad weekend, they're somewhere around the upper midfield teams. Or the car is breaking down. Because Charles Leclerc is a verified street track legend. This is what he's good at. And he could do nothing with this car this weekend.
No. Charles Leclerc is a stud. He's one of the best racing drivers on the planet. He's, for me, a top 3 driver on the grid pound for pound. If he's struggling, then I can't expect anybody else to be coping with it just fine.
Was it first time Lewis has ever qualified outside the top 5 at this track?
Yeah. Which kind of says
it all. And he outqualified
really.
Charles as well. Like,
yeah.
They're
mid.
It just doesn't feel like there's ever...
Right now, they're the fourth best team in Formula One, and they were arguably the best team in Formula One down the stretch a year ago.
Yeah, a pit stop away from possibly winning a constructor's title. And this year, they looked like they had gotten a decent cushion for second. That's gone. Now that's Mercedes. With the way Max has been scoring, Red Bull is chewing into that gap as well.
Yes.
And Red Bull have one car this year.
Yeah, Red Bull's got a one-car team. Yuki Tsunoda is running out of time to try and justify, trying to justify himself. So
another second driver will fix it, clearly.
Yeah, and speaking of which, there could be more drama in regards to that because one of the bigger stories headed into the weekend was a sudden departure from McLaren's driver academy. Alex Dunn was jettisoned out of the McLaren driver academy
via trebuchet.
It's not normally Wokin's way to be quite French with it, but apparently it was via trebuchet, according to Cameron Buckley.
It was the George Carlin, get the fuck out of here.
Oh, yeah. He gone. And it turns out the reason why was because, well, Don had a meeting last week in Vienna. And that meeting in Vienna was with his management and Dr. Helmut Marko.
Now this can only end well. I see Kira in the chat going, I'm free from papaya at last. Yes, and you've traded that for racist Austrian.
What a swap. But hey, at least he'll get
an job,
F1
everyone
seat.
Involved.
Yeah, it's the things you'll do for an F1 seat round here. I mean, look, for those who don't follow the juniors quite as strong, Alex Dunn has been one of the fastest dudes in Formula 2 this year, but he's also been a head case.
Omega terrorism. That man drives like it's an F1 public lobby going to work.
He has 10 penalty points going into the final couple of weekends in Formula 2 this year. He's lucky he hasn't been given a race ban already. He got away with one in Monaco that would have absolutely been a slam dunk 2-point penalty, which would have caused him to be banned for a race.
Yeah, F2 breaks weekly. That's how he drives.
Yes. But he is also extremely fast. That I cannot deny. He's got, I think, more raw speed than almost anyone in Formula 2. I find it interesting because seemingly the talk is that Hadjar will go to the Red Bull factory team next year. It's a straight shootout between Tsunoda and Lawson for the second Racing Bulls alongside Arvid Lindblad. I'm going to be real with you. Even with the head case, Alex Dunn, in my opinion, is a better prospect than Arvid Lindblad is right now. And they've told Dunn, apparently, do another year of F2. If you win the championship next year, you'll have a Racing Bull seat waiting for you. So it seems like it's another Plan C option for Red Bull if Hadjar
doesn't work out.
if Hadger or Sonoda/Lawson doesn't work out for whatever reason next year, they've got another bullet in the chamber they can rely on. Annoyingly, I think that's quite sensible. I want to dunk.
Another young driver will fix it.
Look, I want to dunk on this to the nth degree, but we all know McLaren does not have a Formula One seat available.
No.
They haven't got the clout to get him into a seat elsewhere like Red Bull does, where they've got two teams they can play with. Like, how many times did Mercedes try and find Pascal Wehrlein and the rest of Ocon work and failed? Like, no other team has the clout that Red Bull does, right?
Because they have two teams and multiple teams down the stretch in the feeder categories.
And if Red Bull...
They can get you up the ladder.
And Red Bull, if nothing else, will give you a chance. It's a ruthless, cutthroat chance, but they'll give you a chance. That's more than can be said for any other driver academy in the paddock right now. And there's a conveyor belt going on at Red Bull Racing, again, trying to moneyball another Max Verstappen. So to have Alex Dunn join them makes perfect sense for Alex, because allegedly the plan for Alex Dunn was go to Indy next year, and if he wins that championship, maybe the number 6 McLaren Indy car to replace Nolan Siegel. I'll say this on the record. Alex Dunn is better than Indy Next. It would be a waste of time putting him in there for a year. Like, if Dennis
He would only be there to learn the tracks at that point, honestly.
If Dennis Hauger can spank the Indy Next field, and Caio Collet, who was nothing more than a mediocre F3 driver, was the top 2 in Indy next year, Alex Dunn is going to just lay his meat on the table and destroy the field. It's a waste of time.
Either that or show us the biggest crash in the history of Barber Motorsports Park.
Or both. Who knows? But
why not both?
Either way, Dunn, if he wasn't getting an IndyCar seat immediately, I think it's a waste of time being in the McLaren pipeline at this point. Because it's either that or wait for the hypercar package to come through in 2027, then what's the point in waiting for a year? If he can go to Red Bull, he's got an almost, I would say, guaranteed F1 seat in 2027 if he can just mitigate some of the bullshit in F2 next year. A second year, and I think Dunn walks to the title. Because who's going to beat him next year?
I don't think of anyone. I mean, unless he just is that erratic, but if he's out front, then, he's just going to... He has nowhere to go with McLaren, because I also think, like, with McLaren Hypercar, they're probably going to plug a bunch of the McLaren GT3 drivers into that.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a waste of time for Dunn being in the McLaren program. The Red Bull package makes a lot more sense, and he's got the speed to justify taking a chance on, quite frankly. There's enough upside with him where I can say, yeah, take a crack on it. Why not? And yeah, we'll see what happens. As a Formula 2 watcher, though, I feel really bad for Leonardo Fornaroli, who is this close to doing the F3, F2 double, and at the moment seemingly has no chance of an F1 seat.
Yeah.
It's bullshit. Leo Fornaroli is everything wrong with the juniors right now.
Get ready to learn Ford Hypercar, buddy.
Bollocks. He should be in Formula 1 next year. He's the best prospect in the field right now, and he's getting fuck all. Can't stand it. Before we go as well, and like I mentioned earlier on the top of the show, I love that everybody in Formula 1 media was a week late to this story. Because it was originally posted on the F1 subreddit, of all places. And I refuse to be a Redditor.
Other than when you're a Redditor.
Listen, the MotoGP...
I visit our MotoGP.
Our MotoGP was very complimentary of me. It happens. Okay? It happens. Look, where else am I going to get my Dynasty Warriors news, okay? Just leave me alone.
Oh my God, grow up. It's not 2003.
Shut up. Yeah? Sometimes a guy needs a hack and slash in his life, all right? Right, anyway. This is an interesting one. And if you're not a fan of Mohammed Ben Sulayem, you might want to cover your ears for the next 3 minutes. It looks like he's going to win the FIA presidential election unopposed.
Well, win is relative. Can you win a race where there's no other competitors?
First of first still counts as a win, does it not? A win is a
Okay,
win.
we're playing big rigs. Cool.
Whatever happens,
do we give him the low res trophy? You're a winner.
you're a winner. So, for those who've missed the presidential race, and I say that in inverted commas, we had two women come out and declare that they were running for president in the last week and a half or so. Laura Villars and Virginie Philpott both also put themselves in the race, alongside we've known about Tim Meyer for some time. He was looking like the only real challenger after Carlos Sainz had interest, but then pulled out of the race. Okay, this is going to get a little bit complicated, but I will try my best to explain how nonsense this is. So, to stand in the FIA presidential election, each candidate must submit a full election list. So that means the people you're going to have in all the roles, assuming you win the presidency, right? Now, you're talking vice presidents for sport, and they've all got to represent all the regions of the FIA. So that's the Middle East and North Africa, Africa, North America, South America, the Pacific region, and you need 2 reps from Europe. The appointees for Vice President for Sport must be chosen from the official nominees list to the World Motorsport Council for the region they represent. This is the problem. The only World Motorsport Council nominee from South America is Fabiana Eccleston. Yes, that Fabiana Eccleston, Bernie's wife. Yeah. She's already on Mohammed Ben Sulayem's nominees list. So assuming Ben Sulayem wins the presidency, Fabiana Eccleston takes that role. She's the only one from that region available, and no one else from South America has put themselves forward. So, by logic alone, that means no one else that can put together a president's ticket can do so because there's no other South American representative. That means Mohammed Ben Sulayem essentially wins by default unless someone else from South America declares themselves eligible before the October 24th deadline for submitting candidate lists. They could amend this rule if there's an extraordinary assembly called in the next 2 weeks, but fat chance of that happening, basically.
Yeah, good luck.
So, the new governance rules of the FIA, which were magically adopted this summer, by the way, that was put to a vote and was ultimately approved, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, as it stands, will run for presidency unopposed because no one else can put together an eligible ballot. Great.
I was a week late on this news.
Everybody was.
Well, the thing is that I wasn't looking because I thought this was already the case.
Look, I'm going to be real with you here. I never bought into the idea that Tim Meyer was a viable replacement. His biggest, in my opinion, his entire presidency run was built around, I'm better than the other guy. And
that always goes so well.
That never works in the long run. And look, even with his incompetence in some areas, there are some things about Mohammed Ben Sulayem I actually like as FIA president. And I say this objectively. He's one of the very few people that has put women and people of colour into positions of prominence within the FIA. That's a plus. And he's not afraid to take on Liberty Media. He has opposed the FOM on many, many issues on multiple occasions. That I can respect. He was open to having more teams on the grid when Liberty Media wasn't so keen. And some of his political clout, I think, has been used for the greater good. That's my general opinion. There's a lot about MBS I don't like. His previous comments on websites and magazines says to me he's a very antiquated human being at best. And I think he is very, shall we say, flippant to feedback and criticism. And
he's never seen a fight that he wouldn't. He's never seen a hill he wouldn't die on.
True, very much so. But there are elements of his presidency that I do like. I'd be lying to you if I said that there wasn't. And that's me being as balanced as I can be as a pundit. I still think he's the best option for FIA president, which says a lot about the state of the FIA, quite frankly.
Say the fucking bar.
The bar is subterranean. The process is, in my opinion, farcical. That no one else can put together an eligible ballot by default because of the rules that you've put in place and voted for. It's incredibly shitty. And I've said before, the fish rots from the head. But I also need to make it clear, no one else has run on a platform of anything that would make me want to vote for them. Like,
yeah,
Laura
the platform
Villars
can't just be, well, we're better than MBS. Well, like, how? What are you going to do? What are you going to do to actually help the world of motorsport?
Yeah, Laura and Virginia, I'm glad that they put their names in the hat, but I'm sorry, like Kira puts it in the chat perfectly. A platform of yay women is bullshit. And I'm all for women trying to get up the ladder in certain key areas. That should not be the sole reason why you try to run to be president of one of the biggest sporting institutions in the world. And quite frankly, you just saying, we need the FA to be more diverse, which, yes, is true. That cannot be the only reason you run for FIA presidency. You might as well say,
it needs to be substance.
You might as well be saying, no, I'm Spartacus. Because that's what this effectively boils down to. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, this is not a great situation at all, but the alternatives are even worse, quite frankly. Yes, but that's what the FIA is right now. It's a mess. It needs fixing, and we need to be doing better than just running for the sake of it. That's not how organizations should be run or operated in, from the top down and from the bottom up.
Right.
And to make the big point that Vic's made in the chat that's worth mentioning, it says, quote, it almost puts everything women have done over centuries to be taken more seriously in positions of prominence and power down when people use their gender as the only reason to stand. Fully agreed, Vic. 100%. I am all for women, but I need women of substance, not just for the sake of it, quite frankly.
Absolutely.
Formula One is back in a week's time for the United States Grand Prix, the circuit of the Americas, the proper American Grand Prix. None of this Miami and Vegas bullshit, even though annoyingly I quite like Vegas. But here we are. It's been good. What can I say? Vegas has been a good addition. I can't complain. But it's COTA in a week and a half's time. Very interesting race, I think, in the McLaren v Red Bull title situation with the drivers, as Cam alluded to. A lot to like for both of their teams on the table going into it. And Austin's always a fun round, so looking forward to that. Next up, MotoGP in Indonesia, and my God, what a messy weekend that was. More on that in the next episode. Until then, I've been Joey Harrison. He's been Cameron Buckley. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara.
God. What, 6 more weekends to talk about how much Ferrari sucks?
They can't finish soon enough.